The silence of space broke with a desperate scream. Lieutenant Deho sat at his station on the bridge of the human flagship when the signal came through. His hands shook as he listened to the message. The voice belonged to someone called a Valoran, a species known across the galaxy for their peaceful trading and gentle nature. But there was nothing gentle in that voice now. Only terror. "Please, anyone who can hear this," the voice begged. "They are taking our children. They are burning our homes. The Kryn Dominion has come and we cannot stop them. We have sent requests to the Galactic Council, but no one answers. No one comes. Please, if there are any humans listening, we beg you, help us." Admiral Taeyang stood from his command chair. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. He walked to Deho's station and listened to the message again. His jaw tightened with each word. "How far?" Taeyang asked. 16 light years, sir," Deho replied. "It would take us 4 days at maximum speed." Captain Hana stepped forward. She commanded the destroyer Indomitable, the strongest ship in their small fleet. "Sir, we don't have authorization to leave our patrol zone. The Council would consider this a violation of our assignment." Taeyang looked at her. "Did you hear that message, Captain?" "Yes, sir." "Did you hear them asking for the Council?" Taeyang's voice grew harder. "The same Council that won't answer? The same Council that probably decided these people aren't worth saving?" Dr. Yuna, the fleet's chief scientist, pulled up data on her screen. She was young for her position, but brilliant. "The Valorans are classified as a Class B species, herbivores, no natural weapons. Their homeworld has almost no predators. By galactic standards, they are considered weak." "And the Kryn?" Taeyang asked, though he already knew the answer. "Slavers," Yuna said quietly. "They take populations from undefended worlds and sell them. The Council knows about this, but calls it an internal matter of the Dominion." Taeyang turned to face his bridge crew. Every human on the ship was watching him. They all knew what he was thinking. They all knew what decision he was about to make. "They called for us specifically," he said. "Not the Council, not the Zenthari Empire or the Quinn Federation. They called for humans. Do any of you know why?" No one answered at first. Then young Ensign Boram spoke up. She was barely 20 years old, and this was her first deep space assignment. "Because we're from Earth, sir. Because everyone in the galaxy knows what kind of world we come from." "That's right," Taeyang nodded. "They call Earth a death world. They say our planet tried to kill us every single day of our evolution. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, diseases, predators everywhere. We survived all of it. We thrived in it. And now when someone needs help against monsters, they think of us." He walked back to his command chair and sat down. The weight of command sat heavy on his shoulders, but his voice was steady. "Send a message to all ships in the fleet," he ordered. "We are changing course for Valoran space. Maximum speed. Battle stations." "Sir," Hana said carefully. "The Council will court-martial you for this." "Let them," Taeyang replied. "I didn't join the fleet to watch innocent people die while politicians debate. Did any of you?" Around the bridge, heads shook. Deho was already preparing the course change. Boram was bringing weapons systems online. Yuna was pulling up everything she could find about Valoran biology and Kryn tactics. "There's something else, sir," Deho said. "The message mentions 6 colony worlds under attack simultaneously. If that's true, we're looking at millions of Valorans in danger. How many ships do we have?" Taeyang asked. 15, Hana answered, "including support vessels." "Against a Dominion fleet?" "We'll be outnumbered at least 3-1, probably worse." Taeyang smiled grimly. "Good. They won't be expecting us then." The fleet jumped to faster than light speed, leaving their patrol zone behind. As they traveled through the emptiness between stars, messages began coming in from other human ships. No one questioned the orders. No one asked to turn back. They all knew what they were going to do. Dr. Yuna came to the Admiral's chair with a data pad. "I've been reading about the Valorans. They've never fought a war. Their entire history shows no major conflicts. They don't even have a word for soldier in their language." "They will after this," Taeyang said quietly. "Sir, why do you think they called specifically for us? How would they even know to ask for humans?" Taeyang looked at the stars rushing past the view screen. "Because someone once told them a story about Earth, about a species that came from a world of death, about people who protect their own no matter the cost. They're hoping that story is true. Is it?" Yuna asked. "We're about to find out," Taeyang replied. "Send another message to the fleet. Tell them to prepare for combat operations, and someone send a response to that distress call. Tell the Valorans that help is coming. Tell them humans don't abandon people who need us. 4 days to reach Valoran space. 4 days while people suffered and died. 4 days while the galaxy watched and did nothing. But the humans were coming, and they were bringing their wrath with them. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the first Valoran colony system. What they saw made even veteran soldiers go silent. The colony world burned. From orbit, Commander Jiwoo could see fires spreading across the surface. She was the lead pilot of Raptor Squadron, and she had seen combat before. But this was different. This wasn't war. This was slaughter. "My God," whispered one of her pilots. "Stay focused," Jiwoo ordered, but her voice was tight with rage. On the flagship bridge, Admiral Tae Yang watched the tactical display. 6 Kryn warships orbited the planet. Smaller transport ships moved between the surface and the warships like insects. Captain Hana stood beside him, her face pale. "They're loading people onto those transports," she said. "Just like cargo." Daeho's hands moved quickly across his console. "Sir, I'm picking up broadcasts from the surface, patching it through." The sound that filled the bridge was worse than any weapon. It was the sound of families being torn apart. Valoran voices crying out for their children. Children screaming for their parents. And underneath it all, the harsh laughter of Kryn soldiers. Young Ensign Boram stood at her tactical station, tears running down her face. She had studied war at the academy. She had trained for combat, but nothing prepared her for this reality. "Permission to engage, sir," Captain Hana said. Her voice was ice. "Granted," Tae Yang replied. "All ships weapons free. Show them what humans do to slavers." The human fleet split into attack formations. The Kryn ships detected them and turned to face this new threat. They were larger than the human vessels with heavier armor. By every military calculation, the Kryn had the advantage. They were wrong. Commander Jiwoo led her fighter squadron straight at the nearest Kryn warship. Warning alarms screamed in her cockpit as Kryn point defense weapons locked onto her. "She didn't change course, Raptor Leader, you're too close," someone shouted over the radio. "I know," Jiwoo said calmly. She waited until the last possible second, then pulled her fighter into a dive that would have killed most species from the G-forces alone. Human bodies, built to survive Earth's harsh gravity, could endure what others could not. Her missiles struck the Kryn ship's engines. The warship shuddered and began to list. Captain Hana brought the Indomitable alongside another Kryn vessel. The 2 ships exchanged fire, and the human destroyer took heavy damage. Alarms rang throughout the ship. Crew members were injured, but Hana didn't pull back. "All power to forward guns," she ordered. "Ram them if we have to." The Kryn captain must have thought she was bluffing. Ramming was a desperate move, almost suicidal. But humans from a death world understood desperation differently. They understood sacrifice. The Indomitable surged forward. At the last moment, the Kryn ship tried to evade. Too late. Human weapons tore through their hull at point-blank range. On the planet's surface, Colonel Hyunwoo led the first wave of Marines down in landing craft. He was a big man with scars on his face from previous battles. His troops followed him without hesitation. They landed near a Valoran settlement that was still burning. Kryn soldiers were herding civilians toward transport vehicles. When they saw the humans approaching, they laughed. "More prey," one of them growled in the common galactic language. Hyunwoo didn't bother responding. He simply raised his rifle and fired. The battle that followed was brutal. The Kryn were strong, with natural armor and claws. But they had never fought humans before. They didn't understand that humans could take injuries that would stop other species and keep fighting. They didn't understand that humans could ignore their own pain when protecting others. A Kryn soldier slashed Hyunwoo across the arm, deep enough to see bone. The colonel barely flinched. He grabbed the soldier's arm, broke it, and moved on to the next target. His Marines fought with the same intensity. When a Valoran child was caught between soldiers, a human Marine threw herself in front of the blast meant for the child. She survived, her armor taking most of the damage, and she kept fighting. The Valorans watched in shock. They had thought emotions made species weak. That's what the Galactic Council taught. But these humans fought with emotion driving every action. They fought with anger at injustice. They fought with compassion for the innocent. And those emotions made them unstoppable. Back in orbit, Dr. Yuna worked frantically in the medical bay. Wounded humans and rescued Valorans filled every bed. A young Valoran female lay on one table, her body covered in burns. "Why?" the Valoran whispered.
"Why do you help us?"
"We are nothing to your species." Yuna looked at her while treating the wounds. Because it's the right thing to do. Humans believe that if you can help someone and you choose not to, then you're responsible for their suffering. But you're dying for us, the Valoran said, tears in her large eyes. Your people are getting hurt to save mine. Yes, Yuna said simply. That's what humans do. After 12 hours of continuous fighting, the first colony was secured. The Kryn ships retreated, damaged and confused. They had expected an easy fight. They had found hell instead. Admiral Tai Yang stood on the bridge, exhausted. His fleet had taken casualties. 3 ships were heavily damaged. Hundreds of crew members were wounded. But they had saved 40,000 Valorans, sir, Deho said quietly. Message coming in from Kryn High Command. They're demanding we withdraw and return their prisoners. Prisoners? Tai Yang's eyes narrowed. Tell them we don't negotiate with slavers. Tell them if they want to fight, humans will give them one they'll never forget. Captain Hana limped onto the bridge, her arm in a temporary cast. 5 more colonies still under attack, sir. We need to split the fleet. Then we split it, Tai Yang said. We came here to help. We don't stop until every Valoran is free. Ensign Boram looked at her console, her earlier tears replaced by determination. She had seen horror today. She had seen cruelty beyond imagination, but she had also seen humans at their finest, fighting not for territory or resources, but for the simple principle that slavery was wrong. More Kryn ships incoming, she reported. Looks like they're sending reinforcements. Good, Tai Yang said. Let them come. Let them learn what happens when they threaten people under human protection. The crew straightened at their stations. They were tired. They were hurt. But they were humans from Earth, from a world that had tried to kill them every day, and they were just getting started. The human fleet split into 3 groups, each heading toward a different Valoran colony under attack. Admiral Tai Yang knew it was risky. Dividing their forces made each group weaker. But 3 colonies needed help now, and humans didn't leave people to die while following safe tactics. Captain Hana took her battle group to a colony with a toxic atmosphere. The Kryn were using the planet's harsh environment to their advantage, knowing most council species couldn't fight there. They didn't account for humans. Deploy ground teams, Hana ordered. Full environment suits. Lieutenant Su Jin led her demolitions team down to the surface. The air outside was poison and the gravity was 1.5 times Earth normal. For most species, this would be impossible. For humans from a death world, it was just another Tuesday. They found a mining complex where Kryn soldiers had trapped 3,000 Valorans. The civilians couldn't escape because the only path led through corridors filled with toxic gas. The Kryn were slowly moving them toward transport ships, taking their time because they thought no rescue was possible. Su Jin studied the complex and smiled grimly. I can bring the whole thing down, she told her team. But we need to get the Valorans out first. The Kryn control all the exits, one of her soldiers said. Then we make new exits, Su Jin replied. Her team moved through the complex like ghosts. Human military training emphasized adaptation and creativity. When the normal way didn't work, humans found another way. They always did. Su Jin placed charges on the outer walls while her team guided Valorans to evacuation points. The Kryn realized too late what was happening. When they rushed to stop the escape, they found human soldiers waiting. The battle was fierce. Humans and Kryn fought in toxic air and crushing gravity, but humans could hold their breath longer than most species. Their bones were denser, built to handle Earth's gravity, and most importantly, they refused to quit. One human soldier took a blade through his side. He pulled it out, used his medical kit to seal the wound, and kept fighting. A Valoran watching this couldn't believe it. In their culture, such an injury would mean immediate medical evacuation. For humans, it was just part of the job. Su Jin got all the Valorans clear and then triggered her charges. The explosion collapsed the entire mining complex. Her team barely made it out, but they all did. 3,000 more Valorans were free. Meanwhile, on another colony, Sergeant Kyung Min sat in a sniper position overlooking a Kryn landing zone. She was alone, her spotter having been evacuated with injuries. Command had ordered her to fall back. She refused. Not while they're still taking people, she said simply. For 6 hours, Kyung Min held that position. Her rifle was built for human hands, designed with Earth's warfare in mind. Every shot counted. Every shot saved lives. The Kryn sent soldiers to find her. She shot them too. When relief finally arrived, they found her surrounded by empty ammunition packs, her water gone, her body exhausted. But the landing zone was clear. No Kryn ships had taken off with prisoners during her watch. "How many?" Colonel Hyun-woo asked her. "Didn't count," Kyungmin replied. "Just shot until they stopped coming." Admiral Tae-yang's group faced the worst situation. They arrived at a colony to find the Kryn had deployed biological weapons. A plague was spreading through the Velaran population. Dr. Yuna said it was designed to weaken them before capture, making them easier to transport. "Can you treat it?" Tae-yang asked. "Not fast enough," Yuna replied. "Tens of thousands will die before I can synthesize a cure." Tae-yang looked at his chief engineer, Min-ji. She was young, but had kept the fleet running beyond what the ships were designed for. "Can we sterilize the pathogen from orbit?" "Not without killing everyone down there," Min-ji said. "But maybe. Give me an hour." She worked frantically, modifying their ship's sensors into a targeted energy beam. It was dangerous and untested, but it was all they had. 53 minutes later, Min-ji activated her device. The beam swept across the planet's surface, targeting the specific biological markers of the Kryn weapon. It worked. The plague began to die, but the Kryn weren't done. Their reinforcement fleet arrived, 8 ships to every human vessel. The Kryn commander sent a message. "Surrender now and we will let you leave. Continue this foolishness and you will all die." Admiral Tae-yang's response was simple. "Come and try." What followed was the most desperate space battle the humans had fought. Ships on both sides took heavy damage. Captain Hana's destroyer lost its main engines and drifted, but her crew kept firing every weapon they had. Commander Ji-woo led her fighter squadron on what any sane species would call a suicide run. They flew straight into enemy formation, drawing fire away from damaged human ships. 3 fighters were destroyed. The pilots ejected, floating in space in their suits, still firing handheld weapons at passing Kryn vessels. The Kryn couldn't understand it. These humans were supposed to be rational. They were supposed to calculate odds and retreat when outmatched. Instead, they fought harder when wounded. They protected each other with their lives. They refused to abandon anyone. One Kryn officer watched as a human soldier crawled through fire, both legs broken, to reach a wounded Velaran child. The soldier shielded the child with his own body until rescue arrived. The Kryn had no word for such behavior in their language. "What are they?" the officer whispered. His commander didn't answer. He was too busy watching his superior force slowly losing to an inferior fleet that simply wouldn't stop fighting. On the flagship bridge, Ensign Boram worked her tactical station with newfound confidence. She had been terrified during the first battle. Now she was calm, focused. She had learned something important about being human. Fear was acceptable. Giving up was not, Admiral, she reported. 3 more Kryn ships moving to flank. "Show them what humans learned on Earth," Tae-yang replied. When surrounded, attack in all directions. The human fleet stopped trying to defend and went fully on offense. Every damaged ship became a weapon. Every fighter made every shot count. They used tactics that other species considered too risky. They took chances that seemed insane. But they were humans from Earth, where playing it safe meant death and taking risks meant survival. They understood that sometimes the only way through hell was to run straight at it. After 8 hours of continuous fighting, the Kryn fleet began to withdraw. Not because they had lost, but because they no longer understood what they were fighting. These humans were supposed to be a young species, barely understanding galactic warfare. Instead, they fought like nightmares. As the Kryn ships retreated, Admiral Tae-yang sent one final message. "Release all Valoran prisoners. Leave this sector. Never return. For the next time we meet, we won't be so merciful." The Kryn commander looked at the word merciful and shuddered. If this was human mercy, he never wanted to see their full wrath. News of the human intervention reached the Galactic Council chambers on the Central World. Counselor Jae Hwan, humanity's representative, sat in his seat and watched as the other species reacted to the reports. "This is unacceptable," shouted the Xanthari delegate. Humans had no authority to leave their patrol zone. They violated council protocols. "They started a war without permission," added the Quinn representative. "This sets a dangerous precedent." Ambassador Yoon-ji stood in the observation gallery, her hands clenched into fists. She had worked for years to build human relations with other species. Now she watched those same species condemn her people for doing the right thing. Counselor Jae-hwan stood slowly. He was an older man with white hair and tired eyes. But when he spoke, his voice filled the chamber. "Permission to show evidence," he said. "This is irregular," the council speaker protested. "So is ignoring a distress call from people being enslaved," Jae-hwan replied coldly. "But apparently we're doing lots of irregular things today." He activated his datapad, and holographic images filled the center of the chamber. The other delegates went silent. They saw Valoran families being torn apart. They saw children screaming. They saw the Kryn burning settlements and loading people onto ships like cargo. "This is what you all ignored," Jae-hwan said. 17 species received the Valoran distress call. 17. Not one of you responded. Not one of you even tried. The Xanthari delegate looked away. "It was outside our territory. We have no obligation to help," Jae-hwan interrupted. "To care? To do something when people are suffering? The council operates on principles of efficiency and non-interference," the Quinn representative said stiffly. "Emotional responses lead to chaos." "Emotional responses," Jae-hwan repeated slowly. "Is that what you call caring about innocent lives? Is that what you call having a conscience?" He pulled up more data. "Do you want to know what humans call it? We call it being decent. We call it doing the right thing regardless of cost." Ambassador Yoonji watched from above as the council members shifted uncomfortably. She had spent years learning to speak their language, to understand their culture of cold logic and calculated decisions. Now she wondered why humans had tried so hard to fit into a system that cared so little. Furthermore, Jae-hwan continued, "I have evidence that multiple council species maintain trade agreements with the Kryn Dominion. You all know they're slavers. You've known for years, but their resources are valuable, aren't they? So you look away. You call it an internal matter. You let it continue." "That is a serious accusation," the speaker warned. "Would you like me to provide proof?" Jae-hwan asked. "Because I have it. Every trade agreement, every transaction, every time council species profited from Kryn slavery." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several delegates demanded Jae-hwan be removed. Others called for immediate votes to sanction humanity. The speaker tried to restore order. Meanwhile, 16 light-years away, Admiral Taeyang's fleet was fighting for survival. The Kryn had sent even more ships. The humans were outnumbered 8-1. Casualties had reached 30% of the fleet. Captain Hana's ship was barely holding together. Life support was failing in 3 sections. Weapons were offline, but she refused to retreat. "Sir," her first officer said quietly, "we should fall back. The ship can't take much more." "There are still refugee ships trying to evacuate," Hana replied. "We stay." On the planet below, Colonel Hyunwoo received word that evacuation ships were approaching. He gathered his Marines and the Valoran civilians they were protecting. 12 million Valorans still needed rescue from this colony alone. Dr. Yuna worked in a makeshift medical center, treating humans and Valorans alike. A young Valoran female helped her, having learned basic first aid from watching. "Why do your people do this?" the Valoran asked while bandaging a wounded Marine. "You're so far from home. We can never repay you." Yuna looked at her tired face, saw the confusion in her eyes. "My grandmother once told me a story," she said. "Long ago on Earth there was a saying, 'The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing.' Humans remember that lesson." Back in the council chambers, Counselor Jae-hwan was still speaking. His voice had grown softer but somehow more powerful. "You want to sanction us? Go ahead. You want to call us primitive because we feel emotion? Fine. You want to say we're dangerous because we act instead of debate? I accept all of it." He looked around the chamber, meeting every delegate's eyes. "But understand this. While you sit here and discuss protocols, humans are dying to protect people you don't care about. While you calculate costs and benefits, we're paying in blood to do what's right." "The human fleet is facing destruction," the Xanthari delegate said. "Your admiral has led them to their deaths." "No," Jae-hwan replied. "He led them to their finest moment." "There's a difference." Ambassador Yoonji felt tears on her face. She had always been proud to be human, but never more than in this moment. She watched the council debate and argue while her people fought and bled, and she made a decision. She stood and walked down to the chamber floor. Guards tried to stop her, but she pushed past them. She strode to Counselor Jae-hwan's side and faced the assembly. "I resign," she announced. I will not represent humanity to a council that values efficiency over life, that chooses comfort over conscience, that trades with slavers while condemning those who fight them. Her words echoed in the sudden silence. Jae-hwan looked at her with surprise and pride. You don't have to do this, he whispered. Yes, I do, Yoonji replied, because I'm human. As the council erupted in chaos again, something unexpected happened. The Valoran ambassador, who had been silent until now, stood from his seat. He was old, his body frail, but his voice was clear. The human fleet is fighting for my people, he said. They came when no one else would. They're dying for us right now, and if this council condemns them, if you punish them for saving innocent lives, then the Valoran people will leave this council. We will stand with the humans, whatever the cost. 3 other species quietly signaled their agreement. It wasn't much, but it was something. A crack in the council's unity. Admiral Tae-yang received a coded message from Counselor Jae-hwan. Hold on. Help is coming. The galaxy is watching. Tae-yang looked at his battered fleet, his exhausted crew, the millions of Velarans still in danger. He thought about the council and their debates. He thought about all the political consequences waiting for him. Then he thought about the Valoran child he had seen that morning, reunited with her mother after 3 days of captivity. He remembered the look in her eyes, hope, relief, trust. We're not holding on for the council, he told his bridge crew. We're holding on for them. For every person who needs help. That's what humans do. Ensign Borum nodded. Lieutenant Daeho returned to his console. Captain Hana prepared her damaged ship for another round. They were human. They were from Earth. And they would fight until every last person was safe, no matter what any council decided. Admiral Tae-yang stood in his damaged command center and made a decision that would change galactic warfare forever. His fleet was broken. His people were exhausted. The Kryn kept sending more ships. By every military calculation, the humans should retreat. Instead, Tae-yang activated Protocol 7, the Deathworld Doctrine. All ships, he broadcast. We're done playing by council rules. From this moment, we fight the way Earth taught us, the way our ancestors survived when everything tried to kill them. We use every advantage we have, no matter how brutal other species think it is. Captain Dong-hyun commanded the stealth ship Silent Hunter. His vessel was small, barely armed, designed for reconnaissance. But Tae-yang had new orders for him. Get me inside their command ship, Dong-hyun said to his crew. We're going hunting. The Silent Hunter slipped through the Kryn formation like a ghost. Other species built stealth technology, but humans understood predator and prey. They understood moving unseen. Their ancestors had hunted and been hunted on Earth for millions of years. Dong-hyun brought his ship alongside the Kryn flagship. His team prepared for boarding. They wore combat suits that could survive in vacuum. Not for long, but long enough. Long enough was all humans ever needed. Sir, the docking port is sealed, his first officer reported. Then we make our own entrance, Dong-hyun replied. Cut through the hull. On the main fleet, Colonel Hyun-woo led a boarding party onto a different Kryn vessel. The enemy had sealed all the internal doors, thinking that would stop the attack. They didn't understand humans. Blow the doors, Hyun-woo ordered. Sir, that will depressurize the entire section, a Marine protested. We'll be exposed to vacuum. I know, Hyun-woo said calmly. We can hold our breath for 3 minutes. They can't, the doors exploded. Air rushed out into space. Kryn soldiers gasped and choked. Humans simply held their breath and kept fighting. 3 minutes later, they reached a section with atmosphere and resealed it. The Kryn soldiers who had survived couldn't believe what they had seen. Dr. Yuna worked with Chief Engineer Minji on a different project. They had studied Kryn biology and found a weakness. The Kryn had excellent eyesight but poor hearing. They relied on visual cues almost entirely. We can use that, Yuna said. Create a visual disruption field. It won't hurt them, but they'll be blind and disoriented. Minji worked for hours modifying their systems. What she created wasn't even classified as a weapon by council standards. But in the hands of humans who understood that every advantage mattered, it became devastating. Commander Ji-woo led her fighter squadron through a radiation storm. The storm surrounded the largest Velaran colony, and the Kryn thought it provided perfect protection. No council species would fly through that much radiation. Won't we get sick? One of her pilots asked. Probably, Ji-woo replied, but Earth's sun threw radiation at our ancestors every day. We evolved to handle it better than most species. We can take damage they can't, so we go through. Her squadron emerged on the other side, their ships damaged but functional. The Kryn defensive line had no idea they were coming until missiles were already flying. On the planet's surface, human marines did something that shocked the Valorans they were protecting. When a building collapsed, trapping civilians inside, the humans didn't wait for equipment. They started digging with their bare hands. The structure was unstable. More collapses were likely. But the humans didn't stop. One marine, a woman named Haiwan, pulled 3 Valoran children from the rubble. On her last rescue, the building shifted and crushed her arm. She didn't scream. She didn't stop. She pulled the last child free with her good arm, then calmly asked for a medic. How? A Valoran asked her while Dr. Yuna treated her injury. How do you ignore pain like that? Practice, Haiwan replied simply. Earth taught us that pain is just information. It tells you something's wrong, but it doesn't make you stop. You stop when the job is done. Captain Donghyun's team reached the bridge of the Kryn flagship. They faced the Kryn commander and his elite guards. The fight was short and brutal. Humans fighting in close quarters used techniques perfected over thousands of years of warfare on Earth. The Kryn commander found himself on his knees, Donghyun's weapon pointed at his head. Around them, his guards lay defeated. You fight without honor, the commander spat. We fight to win, Donghyun replied. Honor is for people who can afford to lose. We're protecting innocent lives. We can't afford anything. He activated his communication device. Admiral, the flagship is ours. Tae Yang's voice came through. Good. Send their fleet a message. Tell them to stand down and release all prisoners, or we destroy their command ship with their commander still on it. But sir, Donghyun said quietly, we have hostages. That's against council warfare conventions. I don't care, Tae Yang replied. They took children as slaves. They burned homes. They murdered innocent people. I'm done following rules written by species who think slavery is acceptable if it's efficient. The Kryn fleet received the message. They expected negotiation. They expected threats. Instead, they got a simple statement. You have 1 hour. Release everyone or your commander dies. Then we hunt down every ship in your fleet. We're humans. We don't forget. We don't forgive. We don't stop. Ensign Boram watched the tactical display as the Kryn fleet hesitated. She had learned so much in the past week. She had learned that sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the rules. She had learned that humans weren't strong because they were fearless. They were strong because they felt fear and fought anyway. Sir, she reported, the Kryn are releasing prisoners. All of them. On a dozen worlds, transport ships opened their holds. Valoran families stumbled out, blinking in the light. They had been captives, marked for slavery. Now they were free because humans had decided their freedom mattered more than orders or politics or even human lives. Dr. Yuna stood in the medical bay, surrounded by wounded humans and rescued Valorans. She was exhausted, running on stimulants and determination. A young Valoran medic worked beside her. I want to learn everything, the Valoran said. I want to be like you, like all of you. You don't want to be like us, Yuna replied sadly. We're from a death world. We're shaped by violence and survival. We fight because we had to learn how to fight just to live. No, the Valoran said firmly. You fight because you care. That's different. That's better. Yuna stopped and looked at her. Maybe the Valoran was right. Maybe humans didn't fight because Earth made them violent. Maybe they fought because Earth taught them that life was precious, that survival was worth any cost, that protecting others was the highest purpose. The Kryn fleet began to withdraw. They had faced humans and learned a terrible lesson. The council species fought with rules and protocols. Humans fought with everything they had. They used tactics other species considered too dangerous. They took risks that seemed insane. They kept fighting when they should have been dead. The Kryn commander, released after all prisoners were freed, sent one final message. What are you? Admiral Tae Yang's response was simple. We're the species you should have left alone. 3 weeks had passed since the first distress call. The human fleet had saved 5 of the 6 Valoran colonies, but the last colony, the largest one, still suffered under Kryn occupation. And now the Galactic Council had finally acted. A multi-species fleet arrived at the edge of Valoran space. Led by Admiral Soon-hee, a veteran human commander who served with the Council military, this was the help that should have come weeks ago. Admiral Tae Yang, Soon-hee broadcast, I'm here to relieve you. The Council has authorized military intervention. Tae Yang looked at his battered fleet. Of his original 15 ships, only 9 were still combat-capable. His crew was exhausted, but they had saved over 3 million Valorans. With respect, Admiral Sunhee, Tae Yang replied. We're not leaving until everyone is safe. Sunhee smiled. She had expected nothing less. Then we fight together. Show me what you need. The combined fleet prepared for the final push. But the Kryn had one last card to play. They sent a message that made everyone go cold. We hold 500,000 Valoran prisoners on our remaining ships, the Kryn warlord announced. Retreat now or we execute them all. Silence fell across the human ships. They had fought so hard, saved so many. But 500,000 lives hung in the balance. Lieutenant Boram, now promoted to full lieutenant for her service, worked her tactical console with shaking hands. Sir, we can't let them murder those people. We won't, Tae Yang said quietly. Then he opened a channel directly to the Kryn warlord. I have a proposal. Take me instead. I'm worth more than any prisoners. I'm the human admiral who's been destroying your fleet. Make an example of me and release the Valorans. No. Captain Hana stood from her station. Sir, they'll torture you, kill you. We can't. That's an order, Captain, Tae Yang said gently. I'm old. I've lived my life. Those prisoners have families waiting for them. The Kryn warlord considered. A human admiral would indeed make a powerful statement. Agreed. Come alone to our flagship. The prisoners will be released. Dr. Yuna rushed to the bridge. Sir, this is suicide. Maybe, Tae Yang replied. But it's also the right thing to do. He looked around at his crew. You all know what to do? Colonel Hyunwoo, you're in command. Hyunwoo stepped forward, his face grim. Sir, with respect, you're not going alone. That wasn't a request, Colonel. I know, sir. But I'm human. Following orders that get good people killed isn't in my nature. He turned to the rest of the bridge crew. Who else is coming? Every hand went up. Even wounded crew members on medical leave volunteered. Tae Yang felt his eyes burn with tears he wouldn't shed. No, he said firmly. I go alone. That's final. He left the bridge and took a small shuttle toward the Kryn flagship. Behind him, his fleet watched helplessly. Or so it seemed. Lieutenant Daeho worked his communication station. Sir, the Admiral's shuttle has a tracking beacon, right? Standard equipment, Hana confirmed. And we know where he is at all times? Yes, good, Daeho said. Then we can find him when we go get him back. Hana looked at him sharply. You heard the Admiral's orders. I did, Daeho replied. He said I'm not allowed to follow him. He didn't say anything about going to rescue him after he's captured. Admiral Sunhee watched this exchange with interest. She had commanded council forces for years. They followed orders without question. But humans? Humans questioned everything, especially orders that meant abandoning their own. This rescue plan, she said slowly. It's impossible. The Kryn flagship has shields, weapons, and thousands of soldiers. Yes, ma'am. Colonel Hyunwoo replied. That's why it'll work. They won't expect us to try something impossible. Sunhee made a decision. I can't officially support this. The council would never approve, she smiled. But I can make sure my ships have navigation problems that keep them out of your way for a few hours. On the Kryn flagship, Tae Yang was taken to the warlord's throne room. The warlord was huge, covered in battle scars, cruel and confident. So this is a human, the warlord sneered. You look weak, small. How did you destroy so many of my ships? Because we fight for something, Tae Yang replied calmly. You fight for profit. We fight for people. That makes us stronger. The warlord struck him, sending Tae Yang to the floor. You fight for sentiment. For weakness. Your species will never be truly powerful. Tae Yang wiped blood from his mouth. If power means becoming like you, then I hope we never achieve it. Meanwhile, the Kryn were keeping their word. Prisoner ships opened their holds. Valoran streamed out, confused and terrified, but free. Human and council ships moved in to collect them. Dr. Yuna worked on the medical ship receiving refugees. She saw families reunited, children returned to parents. But her mind was on Admiral Tae Yang alone on the enemy ship. We're going after him, right? A young Marine asked her. Of course we are, Yuna replied. We're human. We don't leave anyone behind. Colonel Hyunwoo assembled a strike team. 50 Marines, the best they had. Captain Dong-hyun would fly them in on the Silent Hunter. Lieutenant Soo-jin would handle demolitions. Sergeant Kyung-min would provide covering fire. This is a one-way trip, Hyunwoo told them honestly. We might not make it back. Then we don't make it back, one Marine said. But the Admiral comes home. They launched at night using the darkness of space and their ship's stealth capabilities. Council strategists said the mission was impossible. But humans had done impossible things every day on Earth. This was just one more. The team breached the Kryn flagship's hull in 3 locations simultaneously. They fought through corridors with a fury that shocked the Kryn defenders. These weren't soldiers following orders. These were humans rescuing family. Kyung-min set up her rifle at a choke point and held it alone while the others advanced. She didn't count her shots or her targets. She just fired until her weapon ran dry, then drew her sidearm and kept firing. Sujin blew doors, walls, and anything else in their way. "Subtle isn't really our style," she said while setting another charge. They found Tae-yang in the throne room, beaten but alive. The warlord stood over him with a blade. "Humans," the warlord laughed. "I knew you would come. You're so predictable, so emotional. Now you'll all die." "Maybe," Hyun-woo said, raising his weapon. "But not today." The fight that followed was brutal. The warlord was strong and skilled. But Hyun-woo fought with the desperation of someone protecting his commander. His friend, his admiral. When it ended, the warlord was dead. Tae-yang was free. And the human team was fighting their way back to their ship through hundreds of angry Kryn soldiers. They made it to the Silent Hunter with seconds to spare. Dong-hyun punched the engines and they blasted away from the flagship just as Sujin's final charges detonated. Back on the human fleet, Tae-yang was rushed to medical. He would recover. He always did. Because he was human, and humans were too stubborn to die when people still needed them. "You disobeyed orders," he told Hyun-woo later. "Yes, sir," Hyun-woo replied without shame. "Good." Tae-yang smiled. "That's what I trained you to do. Think for yourself. Do what's right, not what's ordered." The last Velaran colony was liberated the next day. The Kryn fleet, leaderless and demoralized, surrendered. Over 3 million Velarans were finally truly free. The war was over. But its impact on the galaxy was just beginning. 3 months had passed since the last battle. The Valoran people were rebuilding their worlds with help from the humans who had saved them. On the largest colony, a memorial stood in the center of the capital city. Admiral Tae-yang walked slowly through the memorial gardens. His body still ached from his captivity, but he had healed. Around him, names were carved into stone. Human soldiers who had died defending people they had never met. People who weren't their species, their allies, or even their responsibility. A young Velaran girl approached him shyly. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. In her hands, she held a flower from her world, purple and delicate. "Are you the Admiral?" she asked quietly. "I am," Tae-yang replied, kneeling down to her level. "My mother says you saved us. She says you came from the burning world to bring us life." Tae-yang felt his throat tighten. "It wasn't just me. It was all of us. Every human in the fleet." The girl placed the flower in his hand. "Why did you come? We were nothing to you." It was the same question he had heard many times. Why had humans risked everything for strangers? He thought about the answer carefully. "Because someone had to," he said finally. "And humans, we don't leave people behind." The girl smiled and ran back to her mother. Tae-yang stood and looked at the memorial. So many names. So many lives given for a principle. Meanwhile, at the Galactic Council headquarters, Councillor Jae-hwan stood before the full assembly. He was being formally charged with encouraging the unauthorized military action. The punishment could be severe. Humans could lose their council seat entirely. But something had changed in the 3 months since the conflict. Public opinion across the galaxy had shifted. Common citizens of dozen species had watched the humans fight. They had seen the recordings of human soldiers protecting Valoran children. They had heard the testimonies of freed slaves. When the vote came to punish humanity, something unprecedented happened. The vote failed. Not by a small margin, but overwhelmingly. Even species that had criticized the humans couldn't bring themselves to punish the ones who had done what everyone else refused to do. The Valoran ambassador stood to speak. He was old now, but his voice was strong. "This council ignored our cries for help," he said. 17 species received our distress signal. 17 species decided we weren't worth saving. Only humans came. Only humans cared." He paused, looking around the chamber. "If this council punishes them for that, then this council has no moral authority, and the Velaran people will not be part of it." 6 other species stood in agreement. Small voices, perhaps, but enough to matter. The council speaker cleared his throat. In light of recent events, this council proposes a new initiative. A rapid response force dedicated to humanitarian crises. A guardian fleet. The chamber erupted in discussion. Such a fleet had never existed before. The council preferred to let local issues resolve themselves. But the humans had shown there was another way. And who would command this fleet? Someone asked. I nominate Admiral Sun-Hee of the human species, the speaker said. She has the experience and apparently the moral courage necessary. Admiral Sun-Hee stood in the gallery surprised. She had been relieved of her council command after helping the rescue mission. Now they were offering her supreme command of an entirely new force. I accept, she said, on one condition. We operate with full authority to respond to humanitarian crises without waiting for council approval. People's lives can't wait for politics. The council debated for hours. In the end, they agreed. The Guardian fleet was born. Captain Hana received command of a new flagship, specially designed using human combat doctrine. It was faster than anything in the council fleet, more maneuverable and built to take punishment. They named it the Defiant. Commander Jiwoo trained pilots from a dozen different species in human tactics. At first, they were horrified by the risks humans took, but slowly they began to understand. Risks weren't reckless if lives depended on them. Dr. Yuna became the head of a new council ethics committee on warfare. Her job was to help other species understand that efficiency wasn't everything, that some things like slavery and genocide were simply wrong regardless of politics or economics. Colonel Hyun-woo retired from active duty, but served as an advisor to the Guardian fleet. Young officers from across the galaxy came to learn from him. He taught them what Earth had taught humans, that survival meant never giving up, never abandoning your principles and never leaving anyone behind. Lieutenant Boram, now Commander Boram, joined the Guardian fleet as second in command. She was young for such a position, but she had proven herself in fire. She understood what it meant to be human, to feel fear and fight anyway, to care about strangers, to stand up when others sat down. 5 years passed. The Guardian fleet responded to 17 humanitarian crises. They stopped 3 attempted genocides. They liberated 4 enslaved populations. They provided disaster relief to 8 worlds devastated by natural catastrophes. No species had been enslaved in human-patrolled space. The Kryn Dominion, reformed under council supervision, even formally apologized to the Valorans. They were learning, slowly, that there were better ways to exist in the galaxy. The Valorans themselves had changed. Inspired by their human saviors, they developed their own defense forces. They remained peaceful, but they were no longer helpless. And they taught their children about the humans from the burning world who had come to their rescue. Admiral Tae-yang retired to a small house on Earth. He was old now, his fighting days behind him. But young officers still came to visit him, to hear his stories, to learn from his experiences. One day, a group of Valoran students arrived at his door. They were the first aliens to willingly visit Earth, the death world that had forged humanity. They were terrified of the heavy gravity, the dangerous animals, the violent weather. But they were also grateful. We want to understand, their teacher said. We want to know how you became the people who saved us. Tae-yang led them outside. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors they had never seen on their gentle world. A storm was approaching, lightning flashing in the distance. Earth showing its teeth, as always. This planet tried to kill us every single day, Tae-yang explained. Everything here was a threat. The weather, the animals, the diseases, even the sun itself, he smiled. But it also taught us that life is precious, that survival matters, that protecting each other is the only way any of us makes it through. So you fight because your world made you violent? A young Valoran asked. No, Tae-yang replied gently. We fight because our world taught us that life is worth fighting for. There's a difference. The Valorans looked at the approaching storm with new understanding. This violent, dangerous world had created a species that valued life above all else, perhaps because they knew how easily it could be lost. Back in space, Admiral Sun-Hee commanded the Guardian fleet from her flagship. They had just received another distress call. A colony under attack, pirates, slavers, the usual cruelty that infected the galaxy. How long until we arrive? She asked. 6 hours at maximum speed, her navigation officer replied. Then make it 4. Sun-Hee ordered. Someone needs us. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed. In the crew quarters, Marines prepared their equipment. Pilots ran pre-flight checks. Medical teams readied their facilities. They were human and non-human now, dozens of species working together. But they all shared one thing. They all believed that when someone called for help, you answered. You didn't wait for permission. You didn't calculate costs. You simply went because it was the right thing to do. Humans had taught the galaxy that lesson, and the galaxy was slowly, grudgingly learning. On Earth, Tai Yang stood with the Valoran students as the storm arrived. Rain poured down. Thunder shook the ground. The students huddled together, frightened by the raw power of nature. But Taeyang just smiled and spread his arms, letting the rain wash over him. This was home. This was the world that made humans who they were. Don't be afraid, he told the students. This storm will pass. It always does, and we'll still be here when it's over. Because humans learned a long time ago that you don't run from the storm. You stand in it. You endure it. And you come out stronger. One of the older Valoran students looked at him with understanding. The galaxy is lucky to have guardians from the burning world. Taeyang shook his head. No, we're lucky to have someone worth protecting. That's what makes us strong. Not our world, not our weapons, not even our courage. It's knowing that somewhere someone needs us. Someone is counting on us. Someone trusts us to do the right thing. He looked up at the storm-darkened sky, thinking about the Guardian fleet racing to answer another distress call, thinking about all the humans scattered across the galaxy, fighting for people they didn't know, risking their lives for strangers, standing against cruelty and injustice. We came from a world that tried to kill us every day, he said quietly. So when death comes for others, humans simply do what we always did. We fight back, he smiled. And death for once loses. The storm raged around them. But they stood firm, because that's what humans did. That's what Earth had taught them. And across the galaxy, on 100 worlds and 1,000 battles facing impossible odds and unbeatable enemies, humans kept teaching that lesson. They came when called. They fought when needed.